And this month's member author is Mel Blackwell, author of Uncommon Sense. So, Mel, I'm going to give you the floor for a second. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to write Uncommon Sense?
Thanks, Jim. Congrats, by the way, for jumping off that high dive. That
Thanks.
last minute is always the scariest one.
Yes.
Um, well, I spent 35 years, even before I went to college, through college, after college, in startups, and then got into being a corporate fixer. Anybody that's ever done that knows that you don't do anything alone. So I can't. The book is not a me book. No, who cares about me? The book is about how we, over a period of time, learned how to impact results in business through culture. And so there are a lot of people out there that can get results. And I kind of considered it, how do I do it where I take care of the people as a shepherd versus go in there and scorch the earth, and get the results. And so I grew through the 35 years. And the book was, I started writing notes in a Word document um, about 20 years ago. And then the notes just continued to get bigger and bigger. And then I sat down one day and said, I think I need to document this. And so the book it's a pretty quick and easy read. It's not, nobody's going to give me a Nobel Prize or a Pulitzer, but for organizations that are out there facing that next, what happens when we do well in business? They give us a bigger budget, right? And people go, one day I'll be the boss. Well, you got a bank, you got a board, you've got shareholders. I mean, you really never ever get total control. And so what takes your control away is, oh man, I'm facing a riddle. How will I do this year? Is this the right team? Is the way we did it the last decade going to work this decade? So this book answers those questions. How do you get results through culture? And I think it's pretty powerful. My book is all dog-eared and yellowed and red. I use it all the time. I refer back to it. And so I'll say it again. It's not a, hey, look at me, aren't I great book. It's how we, a group of us, time and again, I would be about a 2 to 7 year cycle of how long I stayed in a business. I knew going in I wasn't the visionary. I was not probably going to stay, but it could take 2, 4, 6, 7 years. And the last thing I'll say on this is I wasn't a consultant that went in and, you know, gave them some good advice and then ran for the door. I embedded with the team. I took a permanent C-level role and we set out to sea and it got treacherous. And if I didn't get them back to safety, I died too. So I ate my own dog food. And, hopefully those that have read the book can attest that, it's a little different than the average business book.
Thanks a lot, Mel. I guess a lot of people talk about culture, right?
Yeah.
But how, in your experience, what are the keys to getting culture right?
Well, the number one thing is everybody has to be on the same side of the rope. And everybody goes, yeah, of course. But the rope starts and restarts and restarts and restarts. And it usually gets recast with the next, oh crap, can we even pull this off challenge? So the first part in culture, what I call make the town safe, it starts at that leadership table. And, I would go in, after a company had tried for maybe 3 or 4 years or even a decade, and they weren't getting traction, and they were getting out on thin ice. So sometimes, honestly, when I joined the table, I looked around and I'm like, that guy, they have burned him up. Like there's no way he's good for. He needs to go to a medic, right? He's not going to do me a lot of good in this next stretch through the desert. So the first part of culture is around that senior leadership table. Is everybody capable? Is everybody in it? Do they have the EOS? Do they get it? Want it? Have the capacity to do it? And then it goes down. It goes down from there, and it goes into this. Everybody has to do their job, but in a healthy culture, executive jobs aren't figuring it all out for everybody. Executive roles are not thinking for everybody. Executives have specific roles they should do. Not so as a table, they have a generic role they pull off, but then each individual VP or C level, CFO, COO. I was generally an ops guy. So all of us have a specific role, but together we have to make good music. It's like an orchestra. Can you pull it off? But what I learned, the number one thing about a culture is, are the problems coming up looking for solutions, or is the executive team able to push those problems down? Even better than that, is the organization, is the culture so healthy and everybody's cast, the roles are defined, the people are in the right roles, and you've got the right culture, everybody's trying to be the best version of themselves. And then all of a sudden this happens. This is the uncommon sense culture flip. They reach up and they pull problems down. And next thing you know, solutions are coming up. When that happens, to me, that's traction. And that's what a healthy culture does.
Thank you. My next question is now a two-part question, because there was definitely, I enjoyed reading the book, but there was definitely a lot of references to the Wild West.
Yeah.
So where are you from?
I'm from Prattville, Alabama, which
Okay.
is more of a redneck than a cowboy.
Okay. Okay. Talk to us a little bit about the square-wheeled wagon concept.
So the square wheeled wagon is a lot of what I did. All of us have gifts, right? And so I had to be around other people that had gifts that I didn't. But one of the gifts I realized was I could create language that got the people all the way down to the concrete to go, yeah, they could relate to it. So the square wheeled wagon came from when I'll add on to what I just said. As executives, our job really is to round off those wheels, what I call lower the slope. So I go into a lot of business and they have the self-inflicted difficulty of working there jacked up. Like I've been on rock climb businesses and everybody's just used to it. And I'm like, man, we don't have to live this way. So the first thing executives should do in their culture is let's don't give any more impotence. Let's don't give any more slope difficulty. Set the game on as easy as we can, right? And so the square wheeled wagon was just a way to communicate with people why we couldn't correct the culture. I'll give you a real quick example. You go in and you say, look, we need to pay our sales organization on profitability. And the organization goes, to hell you will, because y'all don't deliver the product good. You know, our customer service is bad. Those are square wheels. And so nobody fixes the thing because of the square wheels. And I would go in and go, yeah, we're going to do it all. We absolutely, I would go to the sales organization and go, guys, I have to pay you on profitability. I have to pay you what I want you to do. So I can't incentivize you on top line and then get upset at you that you don't care about profits. And they would be like, Mel, you can't do that because we don't have anything to do with. And I'm like, I understand. So I came up with the square wheeled wagon analogy. I said, guys, you're pulling a square wheel wagon and I see it. And my job is to round off those wheels. And so it is a way to kind of create the agreement between the people out there that can't round off the wheels, that have to pull a square wheeled wagon, and those of us with the power to round off those wheels and then yell giddy up to these guys and go, get it. And don't get me wrong, this isn't a country club. We want to kill it. We want to be Ricky Bobby. We want to win the race. But executives need to lower the slope. They need to round off their square wheeled wagons. They need to make the town safe. We have power to do certain things, but then they shouldn't expect us to think for them. So I came up with this last rule in business. It's in the book because I got overwhelmed with problems. And I said, you know what? I don't want to hear another problem unless you've thought long enough to attach a solution to it. And that's the beginning of the handoff of the how journey to the people to go, y'all figure it out, right? My job is to do these things. You guys figure this out. And it blew my mind that the people are very capable, you know.
Okay, so one of the other things that stood out to me, when you're talking about culture and people being a big part of that culture, one of the other principles you discuss in your book is that structure is more important than people.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, I think it's chronologically before, but not necessarily more important. So you won't fix bad structure with the right people. But if you get the right structure in place, well, then the next equally important thing is the people. So early on, and it was actually in graduate school, that was something that was taught, that structure first, then the people. So it's kind of chronology, not importance.
Okay.
But a lot of times what we'll do, we'll build our business, based on the people that are in it. And so the technology changes, AI comes around. I mean, people's leadership table, if you got two or three guys at your leadership table that are running from AI, they may not make it, at my table. I'm like, man, I need people to help me get this thing. So when that world changes, You have to look at your structure every year and go, did I build the company yesterday for today and tomorrow? So structure is purely organizational structure, accountability chart, and trying to define it as lean and mean as you can, but not too much. And then you cast the right people in the right seats. We've all read that stuff for decades. And so it's really important though, because a lot of times when you go into a business, it can be your business from last year, or it can be somebody else's business. You take a new role. You walk in and they're having certain symptoms. And I can see it right away. I'm like, let me look at your org chart because it's not built right. So the structure first, the people second, and then align the comp so that the people aren't fighting and pulling against each other. That's back to the one side of the rope analogy.
Thanks. One of my favorite expressions when you're talking about, there's been a lot of talk, like Jim Collins getting the right people on the bus, are they in the right seat? I think my favorite expression in the book was, "You can't ask a cat to bark." So
Exactly. Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about what inspired that.
Well, like once again, I mean, Collins is the one that came up with all that. I mean, he helped us so much. I mean, I've used it. I remember reading that. I was like, man, this is so good, and it gave me confidence to go out there and address the people issues, structure and people. But asking a cat to bark was just, it came up in a meeting where one time, it's been a long time ago, but somebody was like, well, let's just recast Bob. Well, Bob's been in customer service now. We're going to, let's move him over into sales. And I'm like, guys, y'all are asking the cat to bark. And for a brief second, everybody was somewhat, they didn't know whether to be offended or to laugh. And then everybody just laughed. And so it's just a way to get people to see the ridiculousness of a person is a human being. It's a soul. A person is a soul. And so, as a good shepherd, when you expect them to do something they're not wired to do, and they commit to it, whose fault is that? In my world, it was my fault. I'm like, man, I don't need to ask a cat to bark. So I either have a cat role or I don't. And so that's why when you go back to the structure first, people second, the whole Collins thing, the right seat on the bus, then asking a cat to bark is just a way to get people. You can roll these things out and people quit doing them. We all do it. That's why New Year's resolutions don't last past February for most people. But the asking a cat to bark is a way we can all hold each other accountable, create a laugh, but then come back to the universal truth of this is really not the right thing to do.
Okay, so my last question, I think you may have alluded to the answer before when you were talking about Ricky Bobby, but my last question is, what inspired the chapter, "If you're not wrecking, you're not riding"?
Oh, well, so my brother's 4 years older than me, and pretty tough guy. Like he's the guy that can work on dune buggies. He's mechanical. He's an architect. So we're different. But he was growing up 4 years older. He's like my hero, right? So I'm riding motorcycles with my brother, and in my mind, riding a motorcycle, I'm well, see, I know I'm probably 10. He's 14. I have to double check that, but about that age, and we're tearing through the woods at my uncle's place on my uncle's motorcycles, right? And my uncle's a dentist, and his motorcycles are spit polished. And my brother comes back, his handlebars are bent. He's got mud on. He's got bloody knuckles, and I'm eking up the trail, scared to hit anything, perfectly clean. I could have gone to church with the clothes I had on. And he comes skidding up, mudslings on me, and he just looks over at me. He's like, "What?" And I said, "You wrecked Uncle Roland's motorcycle." And he's like, "Mel, if you ain't wrecking, you ain't riding." And he got off, he straightened his handlebars, cranked that joker up, and tore up the trail. And I thought about it, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I need to ride a little bit harder, right? And so that whole chapter is to allow people in your business. Now, if you do this in a culture that hadn't been fixed, you're cruel because everybody's going to destroy it. They're going to wreck, tear up your place. But that's very late in the book. So when you've made the town safe, right, got rid of anybody that's not on our side of the road that doesn't need to be here, especially culture bandits. When you've lowered the slope, those square wheels, align the team with structure first, people second. Then you get to the part we can race. And now you're turning it over to the business, to the people, to all your sub shepherds, all the managers that work for you. You're turning it over to them. And one of the most important things that you have to say to them is, y'all ride. Y'all ride. Just that we make corrections in a zigzag dot to dot way in a good culture. You never go straight up to north. And as long as you true up a lot and all the teams are working together, then you let people know, hey, it's okay to make mistakes. And in fact, I expect you to, because if you ain't wrecking, you ain't riding. And when you turn all that loose in a culture, It is unreal. The reason I didn't ever quit doing it, honestly, because many times I got done and I'm like, man, that was treacherous. I don't know if I can do that again. Here I go. I go do it again. I finally just said, you know what? I don't want to do that anymore. I'm getting a little bit older. But the reason I kept doing it was because it works and it's fun. And you get to see people grow and do their best work. It's amazing.
Well, thanks a lot, Mel. Appreciate you joining us today and sharing your insights with us.
Sure.
Just if we have a minute, I'd like to open it up to the audience. If anybody has any questions for Mel before we turn it over to Steve to talk about the science of scaling, you can either come off mute and ask your question, or type it into the chat, or we can just move on to science of scaling if nobody has anything.
I have a question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Just briefly, yes. Well, removing toxic behavior. What are some ways to remove toxic behavior in a work environment?
Well, you have to listen to the people. So what happens is if you don't remove toxic people, then and you're the one that has the power to do it, then those people that work either alongside or under that toxic person don't have the power. And they'll make a deal with the toxic person because if they don't, the toxic person will bite them. So by not removing a toxic person, you're empowering somebody who you should have removed or done something with, right? At least discipline to say, hey, you got to stop doing this. But we don't. A lot of us don't. And so my question for leaders all through the business is, why are you making your sheep live amongst wolves? Get rid of the freaking wolves, you know? And they're like, wow, but and there's all these different reasons. And I'm like, our job, make the town safe, lower the slope. Both of those, a toxic person is both a square wheel and a culture bandit. And so you take it head on. But the first thing you do is you create a culture where the people, they will quit telling you. I've run into so many people that go, yeah, my people never complain about toxic people. I was like, they did. You didn't listen, you know? So you have to create an environment where when they see you with their own eyes, start making the wheels round and they see you remove a culture bandit. You have no idea what you're in store for. Those people will get after it. And so it's really more about, if you can't see it, you're not listening. Everybody knows. You have no many times, and I'll make this brief. You have no idea how many times I walk into a business. I've been there 1 week, and I blow out 3 people, and even the board, everybody's like, "Oh man, Mel, hold us, slow down," and I'm like, "Guys, why can't y'all see it?" Like, so it's a commitment. We all have these core values and everything on the wall. Where does it say make your sheep live amongst wolves? Write that down if you're going to do it. All right. But if you're not willing to write that down, fix it. That's the way I approach it. It takes guts.
Okay, thank you. Just a follow-up brief question. Yesterday at AVCCI, we have our Leadership and Management Growth Committee. Our co-chairs are Kristen Daniels and Joe Bocham. So we talk about leadership and fundamentals of leadership. You just mentioned leadership as well yourself. Can you share some fundamentals of leadership from your point of view briefly, if that's okay?
Yeah. I think I really do. I think, you will have an effect on people as either a good influence or a bad influence. And it's a really bad feeling after you jumped out in front of the line and said, follow me. And you realize I didn't know what I was doing, or I didn't have a good heart. And so I always tried to, and listen, I mean, there was 23-year-old Mel and there's 58-year-old Mel. I grew a whole lot, right? But I always tried to be a good shepherd, to realize I want to leave people better than I found them. And I want them to grow in this environment. And I don't mind if they leave the company because we grew them so great that they needed to go somewhere else to bloom. But leadership is really, I believe, the first role of a leader is to create the culture. It's the fish tank. It's everything that's alive in that water of the fish tank, to get it right so that people can prosper and they can grow. And they didn't go to work and have to work in your janked up mess of a company where you didn't have to live with all of the square wheels, but they did. You didn't have to live with the culture bandits, but they did. You didn't have to live, with a situation where it wasn't managed very well, but they did. And so the number one thing for me with leadership is get a good mirror and pony up and go first. And if you roll out a value, live up to it. And Kevin, I know you and I talked about it when we last spoke about the best pledge. And I won't go into that unless somebody wants me to, but the best pledge was one of the most powerful things that I ever rolled out in the business, and it came over about a decade. But it was actually just basically, let's all be the best version of ourselves. And it was amazing and some folks left. They were like, you can't talk to me about what I do when I leave work. And I'm like, I really don't care if the best version of you shows up to work, but how do you turn off the worst version of yourself at my door? And so I think leadership is realizing that you are actually going to be the person that was in charge of a lot of people's lives. And did you do it right or not?